Thank you. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Jelinek. I am a clinical informatics fellow here at Hennepin, and not so long ago I was in your, I guess, figurative seats, not literal seats, as we're all kind of at home or somewhere else now. I was an internal medicine resident, and I graduated about a year ago now. And I'm still here, and I'm going to talk to you guys about all of the technology products and apps and all that good stuff that you guys are going to be using as residents here. So I think you guys are 30 minutes in. I was going to give you guys a break, but I'm slotted for an hour and a half. I don't think it's going to take that long, so maybe we'll just give you a break on the back end. Let me pull up some slides here.
This is interactive, right, Ryan? Meaning they will be doing things as you talk?
They will be. Let me hide that. Bring Zoom over here.
Mostly on their phones. So if people are on the Zoom on their phones, they might not be able to.
Yeah, so I guess just to preface this, so usually this talk is probably one of the more interactive talks you get in the first few days of orientation. And so we're going to be talking about all the different apps you're going to use, all of the different technology products, and I'd like you to try to pull them up. I'm going to show some slides here. Hopefully you guys can see those. So, like I said, I want this to try to be as interactive as possible, and I guess bear with us. We haven't done something like this virtually before, so it'll be a little bit of an adventure. I think there's a couple of stopping points throughout the way where I'm going to have you guys try to jump into either the app or a web page or something, and have you try to send a page or look something up on Amion or whatever. If you can do it, great. If you can't, that's fine, either because you're using your phone for Zoom or you don't have a computer in front of you. That's okay. We're going to record this and you can look at it later. I encourage you guys to use the chat feature and try to participate, along with, if you're having trouble, if you can't get an app to load, if you can't log into something, let me know here. Also, if you want to try to just log into some of this stuff later, here's my contact info here, and then I'll post it at the last slide as well. Informatics department has a lot of resources and can provide some help with some of this stuff as well. And then we'll get into the next slide here. I'll point out that IT is also available for a lot of this help as well. And if you go to the wrong place first, we'll try to just point you in the right direction. If it's an IT question, we'll get you to IT. And if it's an informatics question, we'll get you to informatics, and so on. So let me see if I can do this here. I wanted to do some of these polling questions. Let's see how it goes here. So I put some polling questions up, and that stinks. Well, it loads all of them, so only answer question 1 right now. And I'll just give you guys a couple minutes to pop into there and answer some of those questions. I don't know if it's working. Can anybody see it? I'm not getting any responses on my end.
I see it.
Looks like you have to answer all of them in order to submit.
Oh, that's a bummer. All right. Well, we tried. So we'll skip it. We can come back to it in a little bit. Look at you, one person just getting after it. All right, well, we'll close it because the other stuff isn't really going to make sense right now. All right. So these are the apps in technology products we'll talk about throughout the day. I set this up so there's a QR code in the bottom left-hand side for all of the apps that you can download. It's not specific to iOS or Android. If you have an iOS device, it should take you right to the App Store. If you have an Android device, it'll take you right to the Google Play Store. So I encourage you to pull out your phones and start downloading some of these apps if you haven't already. This question was going to be, how many of these apps have you guys used in the past? I think some of these you've probably used before, obviously like email and other things, but now we're getting into Amion and Telmetic and things that you probably haven't used at other places. So to start, we'll look at Outlook. So this is, at Hennepin, we use Microsoft Office 365 and all of the different products that come along with that. And one of those is Outlook, and this is what we use for email communication. So you can access Outlook through various different portals. The desktop option is available. I wouldn't really recommend it. A lot of the desktops you will be working on are shared workspaces, and I can't tell you how many times I've walked up to a computer and somebody left their email popped open because they were using Outlook on the desktop. I don't know. Don't do that. I think we're all probably good enough to close it, but it's a security risk for you, and I just wouldn't recommend using the desktop app unless it's your personal computer. The mobile app is probably where I use email the most, especially if I'm at the hospital. So you can check out that QR code, and that should take you right to the Outlook app. And from there, the login process is pretty straightforward. You're going to use your Hennepin credentials, so the Hennepin email address that you probably got today, I'm guessing. Dr. Walsh, yes, maybe.
I don't know, Anna. Did any of you get your email address, which is your first name dot last name at hcmed.org? I don't know that it's live yet.
Yeah, we got it.
You got it? Cool. So yeah, you can use that, and the password that you use for that should set you up to use the mobile app. For a long time, I tried to make it work with like the Apple Mail, and there's a couple other mail apps out there. It makes it tough. And honestly, the Outlook app is pretty good, and it syncs with your calendar for work. And the other ones, we've implemented a lot of security changes, and I think rightfully so, that make those less useful. It has to do with how the data is acquired through the app. And I would say start with Outlook, and if it's really not working for you, you can go ahead and find something else. You can load your other email accounts into the Outlook app as well. So if you have a Gmail account for personal, you can load that in side by side with your work app in the Outlook app. And then lastly is on the web. If you just go to office.com and type in your Hennepin credentials, and if you're in the house, you can just do single sign-on as well. This is when I'm at home, this is the only thing I use for email. The web app is awesome. Your calendar's there. Pretty much everything you need you can get through office.com in terms of some of those work programs. And then just to point out, this was not obvious for a lot of people, the calendar is kind of hiding at the bottom when you go on either through the desktop or the web, and you can access it through that little button down on the bottom. So just a quick note on email etiquette. Check your email. At this point, I think in med school and undergrad, it was a little different. Oftentimes you could go days without checking your email, especially if you were on vacation or whatever else. I think this is part of your professional obligation now to stay on top of your different modes of communication, be that your pages or your email or Microsoft Teams or any of the other modes of communication that we'll get to. A lot of important information comes through here, and a lot of people expect you to be available and respond via email. So I'll say it once, check your email and be responsive via email. It helps everybody else out. Use your calendar. So the calendar that I showed you through Outlook is primarily where lots of invites for different events at the institution will come through, whether it's like grand rounds or, now that we've virtualized most of our conferences, a lot of the calendar invites go out through this as well. And so you're going to have to be using this and keeping up to date. Be mindful of sending out PHI through email. I would say probably just don't do it. If you have to for some reason, you can actually change the security setting on your on the message type to set it to private, and so that keeps the person who you're sending it to from forwarding it on to someone else. It puts a different level of encryption on it. So just be mindful of PHI in anything that you do. But email is especially one of those things. And then lastly, be aware of phishing scams. I'm sure you've gotten this at some place earlier in your careers. This is a big problem. Security and IT security in the hospital is a huge deal. I'm sure you guys have seen on the news. There's been, ransomware that's been implemented at hospitals, and it just cripples their entire hospital system. And it can be incredibly devastating for patients and healthcare systems alike. So be aware of emails that are coming from someone that you don't know. We've got it set up so if your email comes from someone outside of our organization, it's going to have a big banner on the top that says this is from outside the organization. It's supposed to just kind of cue you up to say, I think I should be mindful of clicking any links in this or something. If you ever have any concerns, you can forward an email to, I think it's phishing@hcmed.org, and they can take a look at it, and just don't click any links until someone else has vetted it.
And I can give a public service announcement, Ryan, which is you should all know that sometimes IT decides to just go phishing of the 7,000 employees and sends out a fake email to see how many people click on it. So do me a solid, don't click on it, because then I end up having to track you all down and give you lessons about avoiding fishy emails.
Yes. I don't know who Crumb is in the chat, but I totally agree. Keep your program coordinators happy. It's just going to make your life so much easier. And they put a ton of time into sending out emails to all of you guys. And if they don't get responses, the last thing they want to do is try to hunt you down and try to get a response. So it's just out of a courtesy to them too. This question was going to be about how many times you check your email during the day. We'll skip it. Next up is Teams. So Teams is a relatively new platform at Hennepin. In the COVID era, if you will, Microsoft Teams has really taken off everywhere. Teams is a lot like Slack, if some of you have used Slack in the past. It is a communication and collaboration tool. We have kind of one foot in the water with Teams at this point, and we're still a little bit fragmented in that we use Teams for some things and email for other things. And I think within the next year, we'll probably have a little bit more of a rounded solution, hopefully centering around Teams. I think it's been great during COVID, because one of the things that's come up is that information comes at you fast and furious, much like it is right now for new resident orientation. But this is practice-changing information that you need to know to do your job well. And Teams was a really useful way of sending that information out to large groups, but also providing a space where you could ask questions and it wouldn't turn into these long reply-all email threads. So I put this pyramid here, and it kind of shows off, there's different layers to Teams. So within Microsoft Teams, you can join a team. And the teams right now for residents are really delineated out by what program you're in. So I'm hopeful that your program directors and program coordinators will all invite you to the teams that you need to be a part of. within a team, there's several channels. And so channels are, you can look at them as like conversations around different topics. So I'm imagining that all of the teams at this point have some sort of COVID channel. And that's where information around COVID gets posted, right? And so you can save files inside of those channels. You can have different links out to different places within those channels. So it tries to keep everything topic specific within a specific group. So, COVID conversation for podiatry residents is probably going to be very different than COVID conversation for EM residents. And so now those conversations take place in two different spaces, and they have all the documents that are, supporting them in that space. So it's been really useful for that. It's not just for COVID, though. I think you can really imagine this can go a lot of different places. And frankly, I don't know how a lot of the programs have been using them, but I think both Megan and I have heard really good things thus far. And so lastly, the top of the pyramid here is Teams also has a chat function. And I would encourage you to use this if it's, just a quick question that you have for a colleague that doesn't necessarily need an email. You can have files that you share between the chats. It's super handy to have it on mobile. It saves your chat history. If anybody has used Skype before, I think one of the things that stinks about Skype is that it doesn't save your chat history. So as soon as you close out of the box, whatever you guys were talking about is gone. This is not that. This is very akin to, if you're using Facebook Messenger or something, along the lines of one of those chat apps. It is HIPAA compliant. We kind of shy away of encouraging folks to use this for patient care because of another app that we'll talk about that's kind of our digital paging solution. But it is okay to use for patient care. It is HIPAA compliant. You have to sign in with your Hennepin credentials, and it's on a locked device on your phone as password protected. The last few times I've been on service, on a teaching service, I started a group chat with all of my residents, and it was useful for sharing articles after the day was over about things that we talked about, or just catching up on something, or coordinating when we want to meet for certain things. So I encourage you to try it out and use it for things like that. So when do I use Teams? So I'd like to say it's probably for getting updates at a department level. That's at the bare minimum. I kind of walk through a bunch of different use case scenarios that you can go as well. Asking questions to a larger group, I think it's more effective than large email distributions, which can get kind of messy. And then storing files. I think one of the biggest boosts from Teams is that this has been an awesome file repository, if you will. Like I said, for COVID, there's a new PDF document about something that comes out every single day, and to have those in a focused location that's specific to whatever you're doing has been really useful. There's a couple things to mention about etiquette. Set alerts on your mobile device. So, if someone's posting something to Teams at 11 p.m. and you don't need to know about it right then, you can have your alerts turned off until the next morning. If you're using Teams, you can type the @ symbol followed by someone's name, and it should auto-populate based on, our distribution list throughout the whole organization. And it's kind of handy because it gets their attention. It sends them alert that, you called them out. If you're trying to get somebody's attention, this is a great way to do it. But do it, reasonably. Don't at a whole group every single time you make a post. That kind of is excessive and gets old after a while. Within threads, you can see that there's the option to reply. So if someone's talking about a specific topic in a channel, then you want to reply to that. Don't start a new conversation at the bottom. Hit the little reply button, and then it keeps it all in that same thread. So you can see the kind of the evolution of that conversation in real time. Leverage the chat function, talked about that, and then try to post things in the most appropriate and relevant channels. When we started using Teams, I think everybody just gravitated towards the general channel, and everything just got dumped into there. And as we move forward, people kind of caught on to the fact that, different channels have different topics in them that we're talking about, and it got better over time. But for a new group coming in, look and see if there's a channel about the thing that you're about to ask about, and post it in there. There is a ton to learn about Teams. For all intents and purposes, for residents, I think you're mostly going to be using this as a way to get information, quickly and have it readily accessible. And so there's not a ton of nuanced features that you need to look into for that. If you want to learn more, once these slides are shared with you, you can click hyperlink here, or you can snap this QR code here. And this is just a YouTube channel through Microsoft that kind of details some of the basic features and then some of the more advanced features within Teams. Mobile's awesome. The iPad and the iPhone, I can't really speak to how the Android is, but I think it's pretty good. Desktop is great too if you're using your own machine. It works on Mac and Windows. The web version kind of sucks. There's a limited capabilities with the files and everything else. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Within files, I know a lot of people like using Google Docs. Teams gives you the opportunity to essentially use documents like you would in Google Docs. You can start a Word document inside of Teams, share it with somebody else, and then you can collaborate in real time on the Word doc. So it's pretty nice there. And it is nice to keep things inside of our Office platform, just for a security standpoint. I mean, Google's fine, and I use Google Docs for all sorts of stuff. But if you're using it for research or anything that has any sort of PHI in it, I would really encourage you to keep it inside of our Office products, because those are all password protected, and you have to use your Hennepin credentials to log in. So it's just a little extra layer of security. Amion. So Amion is our essentially directory of clinical providers. You can look at it as your on-call source of truth. Amion used to be the single directory that we had for paging. Now it gets a little more convoluted in that we are using Telmetic as our digital paging platform, and there's a directory that lives inside of Telmetic. The difference is that Amion houses actual schedules, whereas right now Telmetic, for the most part, doesn't house schedules. So Amion is a web page. It's amion.com, and then you'll log in using this, HENN. There are some other ones floating out there. The internal medicine residents have their own Amion, subsection, and the password for that is HENIM3. And I can show you this in a second. I'll demo this. So once you get into Amion, there is, you know what? I'm just going to switch over. I'll just show you. Let's see. All right. Hopefully you guys can see Amion now. So logging in through HENN. This is what it looks like when you land on it, right? And from here, you can do two things. If you know who you want to reach, you can just type in their name. And usually if they're not on call, you'll have to scroll to the bottom. When you're here, this is a phone number that's associated with their, I'm going to throw up air quotes, pager. We're kind of stuck between two systems right now. So we implemented Telmetic a little over a year ago, and we're still in the process of transitioning everything away from a system that was supporting analog pagers to a system that's supporting digital pagers. So for now, we're kind of bridging that gap, and there's a little bit of a learning curve here. So you can send a message by clicking this number. And so when you see a phone number like that, a 612, kind of random looking number, this is going to send a page, but it's going to send it to Dr. Walsh's Telmetic app. So you can associate phone numbers with the Telmetic app. So when you're doing this, you can see that it's going to a Telmetic app rather than a brick pager, because it gives you a 500 character limit, whereas with the old analog pagers, I think it was like 150 character limit. So from there, you put, who it's from, and this is going through the American messaging platform. When you click on that number, here, I'll go back. When you click on the phone number, it launches this American messaging platform. So this is not paging directly through Telmetic. It still works just fine. The big limitation here is that when you send it this way, the recipient of the message will not be able to reply to you in Telmetic. So they'll get a message and it will say it's from dispatch user. They'll get the message, everything will be all the same as it were just sending a regular page. The bummer is they won't be able to reply to you. So it kind of takes some of the functionality away from using a digital pager system. And now you're kind of just using the same platform that when we had analog pagers, you're just sending it to a smartphone instead. So this is one way to do it. Within this platform, you can see that you'd select the priority. FYI is basically, I just want you to know this, you're not expecting anyone to get back to you. A *4, is get back to me within 2 hours. That's fine. I would say most pages where you're looking for a response, a *3 or a *4 is a reasonable priority to set. Very rarely do I send a page as *2. There's certain times that you're going to have to, especially, if you're in an ICU setting or if you've got a patient who's deteriorating and you're trying to get a hold of your staff. And then the *1, I don't know. If I need someone emergently, I'm very rarely sending them a page. I'm usually calling someone and, I need to talk through this. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Nurses like the *2. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of pages as well. You're not just sending pages, and you'll see a lot of *2 pages coming from nursing about that emergent Tylenol that's needed or something. So this is the American messaging way to send a message through Amion. The other way to send a message is this link will work, and I don't think it works quite yet. I'm not going to break it on camera here, but the hope is that eventually this link will just take you to Telmetic, and I'll show you Telmetic in a minute. The benefit of sending a message through Telmetic is what I said earlier. It gives you the ability to let the recipient reply to your message, and then you can go back and forth and have a conversation a little bit easier than you can if you go this way. Obviously, the person who gets the message, if you send it this way, they would have to go and look you up on Telmetic or look you up on Amion and then send a message back to you. And that's very much what it was like when we had analog pagers. It's a time killer. It's a waste of time if you don't need to do it that way. There are still people out there who are stuck on physical pagers, and there are still treatment teams, consult services that are still using physical pagers. So we're very much stuck in between two worlds right now, and we're pushing more towards using a digital-only response, but it's just taking a little bit more time. So let's switch back here. Let's pause for questions. Does anybody have questions about Amion? If you want to throw it in the chat, you can turn your microphone off. You can be a brave soul and turn your camera on. We got 97 people. Dr. Young has a question. Great.
Hi. Common question in years past is the Doximity app, which I think owns Amion or something like that, and has some of its functionality. So a lot of students often come in having used that. I have my own personal experience with it, which is that I just prefer the browser.
So, and I'm glad you said that. So there is this QR code here. This is the app for Amion. The Amion app is great for looking up schedules. And I'll show you in a couple of seconds here. You can add your own schedule to your calendar. And it's great just for quickly figuring out who's on call. Don't page someone through the Amion app. It is super confusing because it's a totally different system. It actually just sends them a message through Amion. Doesn't send them a message to their pager. And so we've run into this issue before, and it's tough to work with Amion just to turn one feature off, and we haven't been able to do that. And so if you send a message through Amion, it just sends a message through the Amion app. So if the recipient doesn't have the Amion app, they may never get that message. So we encourage people not to use that platform. If you're going to page through Amion, either page through the web, like I showed you, or find who's on call and then go into Telmetic and then page them through that. And like I said, in the future, this little IQ button here, that's going to be a hyperlink. And when I say future, I'm hopeful that it's in the next couple of weeks here. You click on that IQ button and it takes you right into Telmetic. You'll have to log into Telmetic, but then it'll take you right to a page where you're paging that person via Telmetic. So that'll be a much easier workflow. And like I said, hopefully that's ready in a couple of weeks. Last chance for questions. Should we download the Amion app or just use desktop? So hopefully answer that. You can use the Amion app, just don't send messages through the Amion app. Yes, I sent you a message a year ago on Amion. So I was going to have you guys try to send, do a poll question about, who's on call for nephrology. I don't think that's going to work, unfortunately. The next thing for Amion I just wanted to touch on was you can add your own schedule to your calendar. So you can add it to your Outlook calendar, or if you're still using a different calendar app, that's fine. You can add it there. These are the instructions on how to do that. I don't know if we want to. We're not going to really take a break. It's tough when it's not interactive. In the old days, when we used to sit in a room, we just have you pull out your phones and do all this stuff, and we could kind of check in and see how things are going. But it's kind of tough because right now I feel like I'm just talking to my computer screen. But these slides will get distributed, and you guys can add the calendar to your personal calendar. And if you have any issues with that, just shoot me a message and we can walk through it together. Muhammad K, yes. You're jumping the gun, dude. Digital paging, so through Telmetic. Telmetic is our digital paging app that we picked, gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now. And we really made a big push to start using this in place of the physical brick pagers about 1.5 years ago. And so I think this is the first or second, I think this is the second incoming intern class that won't get a physical pager. So you guys will only have Amion. So I think this would be a good one if you can to make sure that you're downloading the Telmetic app. So use the QR code, download the app, and you should be able to log in with your Hennepin email and password when you're prompted. So if you want to do that while I'm talking, go for it. If you have a problem, put it in the chat. I can't say, in years past, this has been kind of sticky, especially with new interns. I'm hopeful that we have the process figured out this year, but I think if a lot of you start posting in the chat, it's going to be hard to troubleshoot this on the fly virtually. And I know we have some people that are also on the call that might be able to help. So maybe we can just take a peek in the chat, and if certain people need help, we can reach out to them individually. Yes, as to Matt's point, as I mentioned, there are still physical pagers that are in existence, and so I can try to find an example of one on Amion, but you'll see there's a little pager icon that'll be next to their name, and you'll notice that the phone number is usually a little more uniform, like it's an 899 number or a 336 number, and those are actual physical pagers. And I alluded to, when you go into the American messaging thing, your character limit is going to be 150 characters on that too. And some of you may have to carry these team pagers. Dr. Young was mentioning there's a lot of the pass pagers and call pagers for various services are still analog pagers, and so you will still need to use those. So within Telmetic, there's the mobile app, but you can also get to it on the web. And then you can actually add it to your Epic toolbar, which I have found is usually the easiest way to do it. If you know who you're going to page, you can click on the little Telmetic link. So this is just a quick recording of how to do that. So you click on the wrench. It brings up this toolbar. I realize this is going to be tough, but this will be sent out to you later. You'll go down and you'll find under HCMC references, there'll be a little thing for Telmetic, and then you'll just drag it up to the top of the toolbar here, and then it'll be saved for you for later. Once you guys are in Epic and logged in, you can try to do that. And again, if you ever have any issues with this, you can always reach out to either myself or Informatics Education, and we can help get you guys set up with all that. So some tips. Telmetic is a chat app, essentially, but we use this chat app for patient-related issues. I would encourage you to use something else if you're talking about making your lunch plans or coordinating something that's outside of direct patient care. The reason for this is because the alerting policies on Telmetic are such that it's designed to make sure that you know when someone paged you, because they're paging you because it's important about patient care. And so depending on what priority you send a message at, it's going to make the noise on the phone when you get the message through Telmetic. It's going to follow with a text message, and then in some cases it will follow with a phone call after that. Because the idea here is that we want to make sure that you're getting the message. And if you're not on Wi-Fi, then we need to try a different method to get you that message. So if you're connected to cellular but not Wi-Fi and you didn't get the alert, we'll try calling you as well. Or the app will try calling you. So just be mindful of that, and you're going to get so many of these messages that you're going to realize you wouldn't want to send someone a message unless it was something related to patient care. There is the ability within the app to set yourself as away. I would encourage you, if it's your day off, to do that. If it is your day off, there's also the ability to set yourself to forward messages to whatever resident is covering your service that day. So if someone tries to send you a message on Telmetic, it will automatically reroute that to whoever you put into that field. The kicker there is when you come back the next day, just remember to turn yourself back on. You can silence threads. So I think we're largely trying to get away from, pages going out about noon conference or pages going out to large groups of people. If it is one of those things and you don't think that information is relevant or pertinent to you at that given time, you can silence the thread. And that'll stop it from just going off incessantly in your pocket over and over again if you're in a patient room or something. You have the ability to favorite your contacts in Telmetic. I can show you some of the stuff. We'll do a little demo in a second here. Bottom line is it's a chat app, and I'm guessing that most of you coming in are not going to have any troubles with the technical aspect of using an application like this. It's pretty similar to any other chat application, whether it's Google or Facebook or iMessage or something like that. It's pretty similar to the function. There are some differences though, and that's kind of where the etiquette of using this app comes in. So using the right priority on your messages. Right now there's a lot of different priorities that you can send a message through in Telmetic. For most of what you guys are going to be doing, an FYI, a general, or a high priority message type is going to get you all the way there. So there are differences, and I'll show you. They pop up in Telmetic. It kind of tells you what they're going to be doing, what's different about this versus a different priority level. So an FYI is just going to send a push notification to a phone, right? And so you're not expecting them to respond, and so it's not very urgent. They're not going to send the follow-up page and the phone call. So that's good if it's just an FYI thing, right? General will do the text and then the phone call, I think 2 minutes and 5 minutes later, whereas a high priority, it sends you a push notification and a text at the same time, followed by a phone call like 30 to 60 seconds later. So that's really trying to grab someone's attention. So just be mindful of that when you're sending messages through Telmetic. Don't send large group pages unless it's absolutely required. There are read receipts. So you'll notice when you get a message or when you send a message, you'll be able to see when someone has read it. It'll show you that it's been delivered, but then it'll also change its status to say that the message has been read. This is useful because it means that if somebody got your message, they don't always need to reply, right? Because if they reply, it leads to the other messaging alerts coming through texts and phone calls. And so if you got a message and you read it, great. You don't always need to reply, and you don't need to send back an okay or a thumbs up emoji or whatever. You can just read it, and the person on the other end should have confirmation that you did read it. If you're paging in either Telmetic or through the American messaging platform that I showed you earlier, make sure you leave a phone number. If you want somebody to call you back, you'll have to leave a phone number. If it's within Telmetic, it's a little easier because they can just message you right back. If it's in American messaging, know that it doesn't say who it's coming from, right? So it just sends it through that platform, because when you logged into Amion, you just logged in with a generic password. It doesn't know that it's you. It's just a generic login. And so you need to say, if you're sending it to a physical pager or if you're sending it from Amion, you need to say who it's from, and you need to put a phone number in there. Whereas if you're sending it through Telmetic, you're logged in as you in Telmetic, and so it's coming from you, and so you don't need to say who it's from in the message. If you want to leave a callback number, there's actually an extra field in Telmetic where it says a callback number that you can call back on. And then the last point is giving the appropriate patient info. Previously, when we were sending messages to brick pagers where you had 150 characters, this was a lot more important, and you had to get the pertinent info in there and make sure that it fit within that confined space. And so I think the Telmetic has gotten rid of a lot of that, and this is great, and I'm getting blown up on Telmetic. So the 500 character limit for Telmetic is kind of obfuscated the need to this is great, guys. Thanks a lot. Obfuscated the need to really be, using shorter characters with your messages that you're sending. So this is a place where I wanted to take a break and have you guys send messages for practice, but clearly at least 6 of you have figured out how to do that, because I've got several Telmetic messages here. So, hey, way to go, you 6. Let's switch screens, and I'll show Telmetic to you. All right, so I'm hopeful you can see this now. And so this is a relatively new feature in that we can log in with single sign-on. So like right now I'm at home, but I'm logged in through a VPN. So like I'm logged in with my Hennepin credentials on the computer. So all I have to do is click login with Hennepin Healthcare, and it knows it's me. And look at that. We've got several messages. 2 from Dr. Young. Thank you very much. I'm sure they're very important. I'll get back to those shortly. And you guys can see now when I start getting texts and phone calls that this is why you don't send messages just for funsies, because it gets pretty old pretty quickly. But so this is your landing page on Telmetic. You can find people to page here in the directory. You can search for their name, and it'll bring them up, right? Oh my gosh, look at this babyface Dr. Young here. That's great. He looks totally the same, by the way. That's perfect.
He looks like a wrestler.
First day of orientation there.
That's just adorable. Look at you. So from there, you can, send him a message right from here. And here's where it shows you the different message types. So here's your FYI. I'll be nice and I'll send it as an FYI message. And, this is where it kind of tells you the differences between those message types. It's gone. And then you can see here it pops up, and this kind of shows you your message thread with that individual. So what else? I think that's pretty much it from there. Matt or Josh or anybody else, anything else you guys want to throw in there? While I'm getting just an insane amount of text messages and phone calls right now from clowns sending me telematic messages.
Hey, this is Matt. One thing to keep in mind when you set yourself as a way, especially when you forward your pages to somebody else, they cannot unforward them to themselves. So it's very important that if you forward pages to people that you are mindful of turning it off, and important that you ask that person if they're still forwarding their things to turn that setting off once they're back.
That's why I forwarded all of the pages you all sent right to Ryan's pager.
Thanks a lot. That's fantastic. And just so you know, you can't set up the away function on the web. So if you can see, this is the poor man. This is the Hennepin way here of showing you my phone screen. So you can tap this little area here, right? And that pulls up your profile, and you can set yourself to away if you're not going to be answering pages at all. But this is also the place where you can find the forward pages function. And you can set this to forward to whoever you want. I'm standing my status to away. So, I think that's it. I don't know. Anybody else? You have a question?
I've got one thing, Ryan. And on the Telematic app, you can make a phone call from it. And the beauty is if you need to call a patient or a family member or anyone who you don't want to have your personal cell number, on the recipient's end, on the caller ID, it will have the generic HCMC number and not your personal cell number if you call through the Telematic app.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the tough thing about especially doing this virtually is all of these apps have like hundreds of features, and we could sit here all day. I encourage you, especially over the next, week and a half here, where you've got some time on your hands, just play with this stuff. Send some messages, play around with the features. Very rarely are you going to break something by just playing around and pushing buttons. And again, I can't say it enough. If you have questions, let me know. The voice you just heard above was Josh Olson. So he's informatics education specialist, and he'll be available for questions as well. And he's on Telematic. You can shoot him a message there if you want. Any other questions in the chat?
Ryan, I'm not sure if you're going to get to this, but Telematic does juice your phone battery pretty effectively. So having some type of plan to have a support battery or connecting during the day.
Yep, I kind of touched on that near the end, but it's a good point to bring up. More and more our phones are kind of our lifeline to a lot of different things. And so if they're not charged and they're not working, they're not super useful. So just to be mindful of that at the start of your day. We try to make charging cords readily available. I think we still have some like external batteries and stuff too that you could plug into if you really need to. But if you need help, you got to ask for help, and we'll try to get you either a charging cord or something, because we realize that we are asking you guys to use your personal devices, and that's a big ask. But I think that's kind of become the standard in most places, outside of the hospital and in the hospital. And so it is your responsibility to make sure that your device is working correctly. And if it's not, we can try to help you through it.
Brian, a couple things. Mavis Ansu said that it is getting some notice that says when I try to log into the website Telematic, it states I need admin approval. I don't know
Okay.
if it means anything.
Some online thing.
Yeah. Maybe Josh, we can take down that name and
Crystal too. It looks like
Done.
Hmm?
Wow. I'm pretty much done.
I think somebody's off mute, unless you want to ask a question. Junior, I don't want you to feel lost. If you need help, I'm happy to set up like a one-on-one session with you and walk you through some of the stuff. This is tough because it's hard for me to show you mobile apps in this modality. And so I think if it's, one-on-one, it'd be easier for me to flip my phone around and show you some stuff, and then I can kind of walk you through things one-on-one. So if you are feeling totally lost, reach out to me now, because, in a week and a half, you should be hitting the ground running with most of these things, at least at like a basic level. I don't think anybody's asking you to become super users with any of this stuff, but we do need you to know some of the basic functions. So,
Brian, would you be willing to do any just office hour drop-in time, like a 2-hour block or something, either next week, this week? I don't know. In the GT.
I could. I totally could. Yeah. Are they going to be in-house next week?
They're in-house on and off, sometimes for their programs, sometimes for like ACLS and things. So it's kind of a moving target, but Anna might be able to find some chunks that you'd otherwise be doing work and people could just come in and get some mass.
Yeah. Why don't I'll coordinate with you and Anna, and we'll try to find a good time I'm happy to hold office hours or, sit up in the library or something like that for a little bit, and we can have people walk in. Cause I get it. This is tough to do remotely and virtually, and we don't want you guys sitting at home struggling trying to log into something and having to call IT and kind of go through the whole rigmarole right off the bat. So if you are having issues or questions, just let me know.
One last thing, Anna, I think you're on. If you see the names of people who are getting a message that says that an error occurred, contact administrator. If you could just record all those names, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I'll make a note of it.
Awesome. All right. So this is kind of moving on with the slides here so we don't run out of time. I've basically gone over all of this, just kind of the old school paging method here. This is that screenshot of if you were to send someone a message through American Messaging through Amion, it gives you this 160 character limit. That's how you know you're sending it to a pager, but it also has this little pager icon next to it. One thing to note, if you are sending to an analog pager, don't send any PHI, right? Because this is just a little brick that's floating around that's not password protected, and if somebody drops it, anybody can see it. And it's also there are not encrypted messages by any means. It's actually sent over radio waves usually. And so there's this like crazy art installation that some dude in New York set up where he just had a printer that he intercepted all of the pages from the hospital across the street, and it was just printing off like a continuous roll of paper of all the pages that were going through. So they're not encrypted, and who knows who's out there trying to get these messages. But moral of the story is, if you can send it through Telmetic, use Telmetic. If you have to send it to a pager, just be mindful not to send any PHI. All right. Quick slide on the phones. This is another tough one to do when we're not sitting in front of a phone together. I think the important thing to know is where to get help if you need it. This is a phone. If it rings, you can pick it up and talk on it. If you know how to do that and dial out, I think you're pretty much 95% of the way there. There's a crap ton of buttons on these phones, and there's like a screen that displays a bunch of information, and it's like you can do a ton of things with these phones, and if you need to transfer calls, you can do that. I'm not going to walk you through step by step on how to do it. The important things to know are that the phone number is usually listed like right here, and it's more often than not going to be a 612-87 something 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 number. It's usually a 3 here. And so oftentimes when you're sending out the phone number, you don't need to communicate out the whole 10-digit number. You can send out just a 5-digit number that would be 34449 or whatever. That's a little shortcut when you're sending pages, so you don't have to send a whole 10-digit phone number. And if you're paging to someone in-house, they'll know what that 5-digit extension means. So from there, I hyperlinked out to, this is a page on Info On Call that if you do want to learn other features of these phones, by all means, go for it. You can walk through it pretty easily. Voceras, you'll see nurses, predominantly nurses, wearing these. They clip onto their scrubs, and in premise, they're really cool. They communicate between each other. I mean, they're essentially like tiny little phones that are just all voice activated. And so nurses use them a lot to communicate to one another, but we can reach out to them as well with the extension 39797, and then it will prompt you. It'll ask for the name of the person you're trying to reach. You have to know the name of the nurse that you're trying to reach. Sometimes they put their name in the treatment team in Epic. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you know who the nurses are and you can just reach them that way. Full disclosure, if I'm being totally honest with you, they don't work well. I have spent too many minutes to hours trying to reach someone on Vocera and not having much success. Maybe it's just my voice. Maybe I mumble, but it works maybe 50% of the time for me. So take it or leave it. When it works, it's awesome because you can just get a hold of a nurse, and because when a nurse pages you, they don't. You always use Telmetic. Generally, they'll send it from that Amion platform, and so you can't reply to them. And so if you can just call them back through the Vocera, it's great. When it works really, really great. But full disclosure, sometimes it doesn't work. This is more here just to let you know that they're here. Epic has a bunch of different mobile applications. So Haiku is on the phone, Canto is on the tablet, and then Limerick is like an Apple Watch app. They're great. I think we are in the early stages of rolling these out, and there's a few things that they're really useful for, and I listed some of those here below. Checking your clinic schedule. When we do get back to having in-person noon conferences, this was great because you'd sit in noon conference and you want to know if your 1 o'clock patient was going to show up or not, and you could see when they show up by looking at Haiku. The in-basket triaging, you can do a lot of responses to in-basket messages straight from the Haiku app. You can pull up your patient list if you're rounding and get a lot of really quick glanceable information inside of Haiku. You can set results alert. So if you're in hyperspace, so the web or the PC platform of Epic, you can click a little bell next to an order that you place. And so when that order results, you'll get an alert on your phone. So rather than sitting there refreshing, looking for that potassium to come in at 7 o'clock before you go home, you can just set it to alert your phone. And so you don't have to worry about checking it. Dictate later. This is a smart phrase that you can use your phone through Haiku to dictate part of a note. And then Hey Epic is it's kind of like a Siri functionality inside of Haiku. So within Haiku, you swipe up from the bottom and you can start asking Haiku for all sorts of things. There's a ton more to learn about all of these things, and you can do that here. This is the Provider Tech Portal. This is a great resource for physicians to learn about other tools, technology tools that they'll end up using pretty frequently. I think I'm without showing you and being in class and like going through things together, it's kind of hard to talk about this. And this is one of those examples where there's hundreds of features that you can explore. I would say just download it and start playing around with it. And so when you download the app, when you get into the Provider Tech Portal, there'll be instructions on how to activate it from there.
The other, I think, key thing is photographs. If you have a rash,
Mm-hmm.
ulcer or something, you have to go through Haiku to upload it directly to the chart, patient chart.
Yeah, and I think we started last year. We started doing some kind of epic talks for new residents, and I think I'd like to try to continue that this year as well. And there's so many little time-saving features that we can show you guys just to make your lives a little easier when it comes to using Epic, and that's probably several other classes. So we just don't have time to get into it today. But again, you can always reach out to me or Josh or anybody on informatics education as well. DMO, or Dragon Medical One. So this is our voice dictation software. This is not even a year old. We had a Dragon voice dictation software previously, and it sucked. It just wasn't very accurate, and it was slow, and you couldn't really use it unless you were tied to a desktop computer. DMO is none of those things. It's awesome. It works really well. It's super accurate. You can use either a standalone microphone that plugs into a USB port, or you can use your phone as a microphone using the PowerMic mobile app, and that's what this QR code in the corner gets you to. The other nice thing is that it implements straight into Epic. So once you're set up on Dragon, which I think almost all of the residents are at this point, we just automatically enrolled all of you into DMO. You should see a little button on the top of your toolbar in Epic that says Dragon, and you click that straight in Epic, and it launches DMO straight from inside of Epic, which I'm glad none of you have to live through the old way to do it, but this is much, much better. This is another one of those things that we previously had an hour and a half in-person class session about this specific application. Josh has converted almost all of that into videos, which you can get to here on Microsoft Stream. They're awesome. If you just want to get started, just kind of playing around with DMO and seeing what you can do, this would be the place to do it. There's also a bunch of supporting documents on how to get started here on Info on Call. Just a quick shout out to Zoom. We're on it, so clearly you guys know what it is. We at Hennepin are kind of toggling between Zoom and Teams and Skype for our video conferencing. Another one of those things that I think we got pushed into for when COVID hit and everything turned to virtual. But I think at some point we're probably going to land on picking one of these for predominantly most of our video conferencing. The thing to mention about Zoom is that Zoom is kind of reached into the clinical space more so than the other two, Teams and Skype, for the video component of it at least. So Zoom is our vendor that we're using for telemedicine in the clinic and also on the inpatient side. So in clinic, there is, residents will hopefully be on this platform in the near future. And so we're using Zoom to connect with our patients for telemedicine visits. We're also in the process of rolling out, it's not technically telemedicine, but it's like a virtual encounter on the inpatient side. So for instance, we tried to get iPads into all of the COVID rooms to, mitigate the risk of exposure repeatedly to a patient that's COVID positive and to preserve some PPE. Rather, we put an iPad in the room, and then the provider or the nurse or anyone else in the care team for that matter just connects with the patient through Zoom. That process is changing like as we speak, and will hopefully be a lot easier in the near future. So we are using Zoom for a lot of patient-facing applications right now. Next quick plug is called the Guidebook app, and this is MedEd to Go. This came about after I was done with residency, so I can't say that I used it a ton, but in playing around with it, it's awesome. It is essentially, like what it says, it's a guidebook to all of the medical residency programs in the Twin Cities. I think it's hosted, Dr. Walsh, you can speak more to this than I can, I'm sure, but it's hosted by the GME program in town. And it basically, once you go into the MedEd to Go guidebook, it lists out all of the different sites for residents to rotate through in the Twin Cities. And it just breaks down like all of the info that you would want to know walking in there on day one. I think if you're a Hennepin only resident, it's probably not super useful. But if you're going to other locations, this is perfect. And honestly, there's stuff for Hennepin residents that, I didn't either know about or I'd forgotten about that lives inside of this app. So it's just like a nice little repository for like resident specific information around these different sites. So I would encourage you to check it out. Info on call. This is another one of those things that has been around for a really long time. And when COVID came, we had to kind of pivot our strategy away to other more nimble strategies. So info on call for the longest time has been our repository for all of our information. There's the clinical portal on here, there's department specific information, and a lot of this is still really, really useful and relevant. The downside of info on call is that it's only accessible when you're in the hospital or if you're logged in through the VPN. So it kind of limited access to some of this information. Having said that, you're still going to need to use it, and there's still a lot of really great stuff in there. I think in the interest of time, I'll probably skip walking through it, and you can just check it out on your own. I would highly suggest starting in the clinical tab here. This is where you can link out to all sorts of things, including, up to date. You can get to different resources that are more department specific. There's a whole section on diabetes documents and guidelines that's in there that's fabulous. Our ID department has a ton of really useful PDFs in there for treating specific disease processes. One little screenshot here, this is of when you click into up to date, and you guys are all going to want to do this so you can get up to date on your phone. So you'll download the up to date app on your phone. You'll have to register your account through Hennepin. So you'll have to click through clinical and then go to up to date, and then it'll launch the up to date page, and you'll see here that you're logged in through Hennepin. And then you register, and it'll ask you to type in, a username and password for that's specific to you. And then you can use that username and password to log into up to date. If you already have an up to date account, you can still use that. You just have to register that account with Hennepin. And so that gives you access to use up to date on your phone, which I can't imagine making it through residency without that. So you should definitely check that out. And then I hyperlinked out to this clinical section here if you want to check that out later. Dr. Young mentioned that SharePoint is where we're using a lot of, or posting a lot of information. I linked to that earlier with this provider tech portal. That is a SharePoint site. There's a COVID specific site. When you log into Epic now, you'll see 4 big tiles on the login page. There's the COVID SharePoint page, the provider tech portal, the nursing tech portal, and then something around billing and coding, which isn't as relevant to residents, but it's all kind of plastered right on the front of Epic now, so you can get to it pretty easily. Is there somewhere a list of all the apps that we should download on our personal phones? So I listed them off on the beginning of these slides, and I'll send these slides to Anna when I'm done blabbering here, and you guys can get after it and click through the links and download the apps and all that stuff. So that's kind of getting to the end of it here. I have some obligatory parting thoughts. I think this goes without saying, you guys are entering a new phase of your career, and you're doctors now, and you're also employees. You're not students anymore. You are representing our organization as physicians. And that's a pretty big responsibility. And so I think in knowing that, you have to be mindful of how you're representing yourself in the community. And a big component of that is how you display yourself on social media. I'm on social media. I put my Twitter handle on the first page of the slide. Go ahead and follow me and tweet at me, whatever. I think a lot of our physicians are pretty active on social media. You just have to be mindful of what you're posting. Couple of guidelines here: don't post things that you wouldn't want your program director to see. Even if they're not following you on social media, they'll find out about it. And if you're a physician and you have, physician in your handle, you have to be mindful of, are you sending out information that can be conveyed as clinical advice? Don't do that. That puts you at risk. That puts the institution at risk. So just be thoughtful about it. You can go ahead and post pictures of your bike rides or whatever you're baking on the weekends. That's not an issue at all. But when it comes to your medical opinions and your positions on politics and other things, be thoughtful and think twice before posting it. And then this goes without saying, don't ever post anything that has patient information on it. If it's a picture of you in the hospital, just be damn sure that it doesn't have any patients in it in the background, or it doesn't have any PHI in it. It's fine for you to post a picture of you in your white coat. Just be mindful that it doesn't have any patient information in it. We got to this earlier: charge your phones. They're your digital lifeline. I just went through, 12 examples of things that you're going to use probably on a near daily basis, and more often than not that you're going to use them on your mobile device. And so making sure that's charged and working correctly is imperative to making it through the day. If it's not working, tell somebody. Tell somebody who can hopefully help you with it, as opposed to just kind of floating around your cohort of residents and, not getting the answer that you're looking for. I threw a couple of contacts at the bottom here. One is me and one is Informatics Education. You can email both of those at any time, and you can reach out to me on Talmedic, on Teams, whatever is easy for you. I try to be pretty available to answer these questions, and if I can't find the answer, I'll get you the right person who can. I think that's all I've got. I don't see any new questions here. What do we got for questions in the crowd? Are there signs of life? Is anyone there?
I do have a quick question, if that's all right.
Who's that?
Margot. I don't know.
Hey, Margot.
Hey. For the Dragon app on the phone, will that work if we don't have Haiku downloaded on our phone?
Yeah.
Because I don't have the update, so it'll still work to Epic on a desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, those two things are mutually exclusive. So if you have Haiku and you have a Dragon license, you can use Dragon inside of Haiku. But if you don't have Haiku and you only have the PowerMic Mobile, if I'm on Epic and I've got the cursor where I want to do it, I can start talking into my phone and the text will show up on the computer inside Epic.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, if you would just list each of the apps and just the icon, the visual icon for each in just a one-pager, then I can upload it onto that website that we're using.
How's that? Does that work?
I'm looking for the name too. I can otherwise you don't have it as a single, just because folks,
yeah.
When you look at the little smoky teardrop there in the right-hand corner, you don't know what word to associate it with.
It's the Smoky Teardrop app. Come on.
Teardrop.
It screams Dragon.
Yeah, not so much.
What else, guys? This is tough because this is usually the session where it's all hands up in the air and lots of issues, and it worries me that you guys are all so quiet.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
Yeah, my name is Mavis. I'm with Family Medicine. I have a question with regard to the Dragon app. So we don't have access right now, right? Because when I opened it, it asked for the host website, my username, and password. So is that something that's set up later?
Yeah, so to use the PowerMic app, you'll have to go through the link that's here to register yourself. And then, Josh, if you're still on the line, jump in if I'm saying something that's not right. So you'll have to go through info on call.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a link where you'll register your license, and then Nuance or Dragon will send you an email with a link, and then that will set up your mobile app through that link. So it's not the smoothest process. So it shouldn't work yet. You have to go through a little bit of a process to make it work, though.
Gotcha. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you just have to configure the app for HCMC. And then you can also set up multiple profiles if you're going to other hospitals with Dragon Medical One as well. And then you use that same app and just have one profile for each hospital. So we have instructions on how to configure it. There's one link that you'll use for Android phones and one that you'll use for iPhones.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, who drew on my screen here, huh? That seems like a Dr. Young thing, maybe.
I think I did it by accident. I didn't realize it. I think I can draw on the screen.
It's fine. I mean, at least I know someone's out there. I feel like I'm like a radio show host right now. Any other callers? Can I log in another country? I'm still in Austria. Wow.
I want to know how to write on your screen.
I'm not, yeah. How is Sophie still in Austria? Wow, that's fun. All right, well, I'm not going to pry too hard here. I've said it about 100 times. Just reach out to me with questions. Now is the time to do it before you get into the throes of starting an internship. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our next speaker. Let's see if I can do that. I'll stop sharing. My face is huge now.
Me or David Settleman?
I think it's David Settleman, right?
Yep. So I think everyone just feel free to, I'm sure you already feel free to get up and move about your own cabins, but get a drink, pee, whatever you need to do while we get things set up. I do have one announcement, however, which is that parking cards, there is a chance that your parking cards won't work till tomorrow or Friday. If that happens, and I'll post this in the chat too, if that happens, you should take a ticket when the little bar goes, or take a ticket at the entry, and then, let's see, Anna, you had detailed instructions for me, which I will post. If your card doesn't work until tomorrow, Friday, if a card doesn't work, pull a ticket, use the call button when leaving, just tell them you're a new resident and they will open the gate. Which does bring up a really great story from before like a decade ago. On the last day of residency, a resident, the gate wouldn't go up and wouldn't go up and wouldn't go up. And she was just angry and ready to leave, and she just drove right through the gate. So, you know. Which parking ramp? Great question. This is the 8th and Chicago ramp. So there's a lot of construction right now, right on the corner, but it's kind of across the street, across Chicago Ave from the CSC. And there's a tunnel underground that lets you walk underground into the hospital without going outside, or you just have to look at the entryways, or you can go through the, I believe, Red 1 entry. As an employee, Matt, Ryan, anyone know I know Blue 1 is an employee entry. The lower level from the parking ramp is an employee entry. Is the ED entrance?
So
I believe I've went through there.
Say that again, Anna?
I've went through the ED. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I have.
Okay.
I think you're not. It's the back side of the ED is where they want employees to go through. So I think it's that, the tunnel entrance, and honestly, I think that's it right now. Because Blue, they don't want employees going through the Blue entrance right now either. at least as of a week and a half ago.